This is HIIT'N 50, the fitness and wellness podcast serving the over 50 community. I'm your host, Chris Cotnor. Welcome to the third episode of the HIIT'N 50 podcast. I'm your host, Chris Cotnor. This week's episode is all about strength, stability, and nutrition. We already know that the benefits of regular exercise are numerous. Study after study has found that regular exercisers live as much as a decade longer than sedentary people. So if you're already exercising regularly, you definitely have a leg up. But equally important is maintaining muscle mass and strength as we age. Starting at around age 30, people lose 3 to 5% of their muscle mass per decade, which can lead to sarcopenia, which is medically defined as the gradual loss of muscle mass, strength, and function. This can impact balance, joint health, and the ability to perform daily activities, especially later in life. While we don't have the ability to reverse the aging process, we do have the ability to increase our muscle mass and strength through training. Strength training has numerous benefits to the aging adult, including counteracting the impact of sarcopenia, boosting metabolic rate, enhancing bone density, improving functional independence, and of course, it's great for our mental health and well-being. Before I get to our first guest, I just want to remind you that if you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. You can find me on X at CCOTNOIR, Facebook at Christopher Cotnor, Instagram at CCOTNOIR, and LinkedIn at Chris Cotnor. And don't forget to subscribe to the HIIT'N 50 newsletter, which comes out each Friday and is published on Substack. My first guest this week is Christine Boyers-Zazzaro. Christine is a certified personal trainer, and she discusses the importance of strength training, the impact on our bodies, and perhaps most importantly, how to get started if you are not already training regularly. I'm pleased to welcome back Christine Boyers-Zazzaro. She is a certified personal trainer, and we're going to be talking about all things strength training today. So welcome back, Christine.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's great to be back.
You survived the earthquake, I assume.
Yeah, well, I was actually in the gym training a client at the time, and it was a little bit of an earth-shaking moment. But we continued to train. I guess we should have probably left the building, but we continued to train. She didn't want to miss a minute of her session.
Well, it's not a surprise that you were actually in the gym. I was in a barber chair, and luckily she was almost entirely done. I think she was just fixing my neck or whatever. So it wasn't like I had scissors to my head or whatever. But yeah, it's a little jarring, in New Jersey to have an earthquake. And then, I read, if this kind of thing happened in California, they wouldn't even blink.
Oh yeah, I was hearing from people down in Florida where I'm from that were texting me, "Are you guys okay? Are you okay?" And I'm kind of laughing, thinking, "Yeah, I mean, thank God we are." But yes, I appreciate everyone's concern, but I guess it became real national news quickly.
Yeah, it did, and there were some funny videos funny. Now that we know there wasn't a lot of damage, but like dogs freaking out, pictures falling off walls. We didn't have any of that, luckily, but people definitely ran into the streets wondering what the heck was going on. And in fact, I just saw a next door post in my email because, some of the posts on that platform cracked me up. But somebody had said, "What was that explosion?" And apparently they hadn't been paying attention to the news, so had no idea that we actually experienced an earthquake and then later an aftershock or two, which I find hilarious. Like, you must be living under a rock.
Yeah, exactly.
In any case, so we're here to talk about strength training, and I'm going to just start off with, why is strength training so important for older adults?
Well, first of all, as we get older, and it's a gradual process, but we start losing lean muscle mass. And without participating in any type of activity, it starts to diminish gradually, as does like balance and everything in life. So it's important to build lean muscle mass, particularly for bone health, for stamina, endurance, joint support. As you get older, back to bone health, you can develop what's called osteoporosis. And with osteoporosis, your bones become brittle. And so think about this. Think about your muscles and tendons and ligaments, everything surrounding all your different joints. Well, if you're not using those joints, those muscles, and through weight training or some type of resistance training, they're going to start to atrophy, and then all the pressure goes onto the joints. So if you have osteoporosis, there's no density in those joints.
I just read an article in preparation for this discussion on the article essentially started out by saying that only 13% of adults over the age of 50 actually incorporate strength training into their exercise routines. Why do you think that is? It wasn't specific to a gender. It was just 13% of adults. So I'm just curious why you think that is.
Well, I think in general, unfortunately, our country's become pretty inactive. And when you look at people that do go to a gym, they're sort of a minority when you look at the rest of the population. But the reason why I believe that the 50 and over group does not do as much strength training is because it wasn't part of their growing up necessarily. And I think laziness. There's a whole bunch of factors that contribute. It could be socioeconomic. It could be just cultural. It could be just not making it a priority.
So we can kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this, but do you think there's a level maybe of, I can't do that, or I need to work out with weights? Maybe there's some, misconceptions about what strength training actually is. So maybe you could just talk about the different types of strength training that you do with your clients.
Okay, well, that's a good point. So I've actually had women come to me, in their 50s, and tell me they want to lose weight, they want to start working out, but they don't want to bulk up. And that's always it's always kind of humorous in a sense to me, because you're not going to bulk up, but they don't realize that. And what weight training and resistance training does, it builds lean muscle mass. And with a lean muscle mass, you're going to utilize calories more efficiently, but you're not going to bulk up first of all, women don't have the hormones to bulk up unless they're taking hormones, or they're actually into bodybuilding. There's that's a whole nother avenue, but there's a lot of things that are intimidating to people to get involved in a weight resistance training program. And it's also not knowing what to do. They walk into a gym, they feel intimidated, or they're maybe, they're not sure how to even approach it, or they may not be able to afford a certified personal trainer. So there's a lot of things that do discourage people from going into the gym to get involved in weight resistance training. And they don't even have to go to the gym. They can do it at home as well. There's ways you can, make your own little home gym.
Yeah, I think maybe if you can build upon that, because I think that to me, in terms of why people don't go to the gym necessarily, or why they don't weight train, they probably don't have the equipment at home, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable doing that in front of other people at the gym. So what are some ways that people could do that at home?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. You don't have to have a whole full, setup in a room. You can basically resistance bands, some dumbbells, medicine balls. You can just get a few items without spending a lot of money. A weight bench. I would suggest a weight bench, and basically combining, doing some light resistance training with bands, using some dumbbells. There's so many videos out there right now for people that they can, watch the videos and learn how to do some things that, the proper way with the proper techniques. But there's no reason why they can't find a little spot in their house or apartment and, make a little gym for themselves that they can, use the bands and the weights and medicine balls and whatever else they have.
You yourself being a personal trainer, you're in insane shape. You've mentioned your age on the show before, but as a 60-year-old, do you think that that's more intimidating or inspirational to people to me, it seems it would be inspirational because I'm seeing somebody, um, you know, that has worked incredibly hard, to get into shape. You obviously do this for a living. But maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And before we came on the air this morning, you also talked about a couple of clients who you train who are in their 80s. And maybe if you could just take sort of part two of this and talk about your approach with, somebody who might be older but recognizes the importance of strength training, versus somebody who might be like me who's 53, and recognizes the importance of strength training, but, maybe the techniques are a little different.
Sure. Well, I'll answer the first question. Basically, I I have clients of all different ages. I had a 12-year-old client yesterday, and then this morning I worked with an 87-year-old. So, and as far as inspiration goes, I think that because I practice what I preach, and I really and I engage in it myself. I work out very hard. I train 6 days a week, and usually on the seventh day, I still do something. I'll walk or something a little more low key. But I, I've been fortunate that because of my passion for this and my expertise, that I have people that come to me of all ages and do feel inspired because I take an approach of not a hardcore approach, but a subtle approach of making them feel like they're working hard without being pushed by a drill sergeant. And so I work with all different ages and all different fitness levels. Now, as far as my older clientele goes, I have a variety of clients that have hip replacements, knee replacements, are just starting out, in their 60s, in doing fitness training for the first time. And for example, I had an 87-year-old client this morning. My 87-year-old client, he just got back from Florida. God bless, he and his wife drove all the way back. They only took one overnight break, so they drove 11 hours one day, spent the night, and then 11 hours the other day. He's as stiff as a board. He hasn't been doing his regular workout routine. And so I worked with him this morning, and we just basically did a lot of stretching. But what I told him is that he needs to get back into his strength training because I could notice weaknesses. I felt like his legs were much weaker by the way he was walking, and where he was telling me he was having aches and pains. So after our session this morning, he said he felt so much better. Well, basically, we got the fluid flowing back through those joints, and he felt a little less stiffness after moving. So physical activity is so important to keep those joints from getting stiff.
Are there more benefits to resistant band training, weight training, body weight training? I know you incorporate all, but I mean, it's about overall, it's about strength. So, what's your take on those different approaches?
Weight training is going to stimulate more muscle growth. So weight training can be, I'm going to throw in there free weights, and then you've got machines. With the machines, you're going to have more stability to a sense where the machine kind of guides you, but you're not going to be necessarily deviating from the movement of the machine. Free weights, you're going to be activating a little bit more of the joints in a different fashion. The difference between machines and the free weights are the machines, again, guide you a little bit more. The free weights, you really need to be making sure you have proper technique and form. Without proper technique and form, you can set yourself up for, injuries or muscle pulls. But they're both great, and they both help work with creating bone density, creating lean muscle mass, endurance, through having more energy because you do have more lean muscle mass. Also, through lean muscle mass, it also creates more a basal metabolic rate, which is your resting metabolic rate. So when you're not doing anything, you're going to continue to burn calories more efficiently than somebody who doesn't do any of those. Now, as far as the body weight exercises go, body weight exercises are going to work a little bit more on flexibility, balance, stamina. It could be speed if you're doing, jump squats, plyometric type exercises. But they're all three are something that I incorporate in all of my workouts with all my clients. That's the approach I take. I feel all three are very, very necessary. And with body weight exercises, it's something you can do on the road. If you're in a hotel and you have 10 minutes, 10 minutes is better than nothing at all. You can do some push-ups. You can do some squats. You can do some planks. You can do a variety of things in your hotel room if you're traveling that you don't need to go to the gym for.
Do you ever get sort of, this is going to come out wrong, but you know, like get your shit together or a little bit on the meaner side with some clients? Because I feel like your description of your client who's 87 years old, right? He's driving. He recognizes that he needs to get to the gym and actually goes to the gym. 87 years old. Like, this is why we're doing what we're doing now. So do you feel like, I mean, for lack of a better word, do you feel like some people just need a kick in the ass? Like, you need to say, you know what? You're going to live your 70s and 80s, with a walker or what? I don't know, but I feel strongly that, people need to incorporate strength training.
Well, absolutely. And one thing about having a trainer is there's a certain amount of accountability. So I can actually, if I don't see a client for, let's say, 2 weeks, and I knew they went away for a week, but they haven't gotten back, they were supposed to get back to me, I will reach out to them. And 9 out of 10 times they're going to set up that appointment right away because they feel a sense of accountability to me. But but yeah, it's amazing how people can tend to stray, but if you reel them back in. Now, my approach with everyone is different. I have to be tougher on some clients. I've got one male client who I need to take out the whip once in a while, I hate to say, but once I do, he appreciates it. And then I've got others that you have to take more of a softer approach to. They're it's a struggle for them to even get there to the gym. But the fact that they're there is just it's a success rate in itself.
For people that are just starting out. So let's take this again in two parts. Part one is people that are just starting out, but may not either feel comfortable or can't afford or for whatever reason don't go see a personal trainer. How can they get started? And then, obviously the other side of this is, I feel like I can benefit from a personal trainer because I don't necessarily know, like, okay, I'm doing squats. I know, generally speaking, how my form is supposed to be. I can see it. But I don't know if it's always right. I don't know if I'm leaning one way or the other. I don't know if I'm hurting myself, in the long term, with some of my form. So first, people that are just starting out who don't go to a personal trainer, but to me, strength training is one of those things. If you're just starting out, it probably makes sense to seek some professional assistance.
Well, for somebody just starting out, and let's say they join a gym, for example, most gyms offer like one or two complimentary training sessions where, or will have somebody, if they request it, to show them around how to use the equipment. Now, if that person just works for the gym and is just showing them how to use the equipment, they may not be able to develop a workout program for this person, but at least they're learning how to use the equipment and hopefully properly. So you don't want anyone to be discouraged because they can't afford a personal trainer to not go to the gym. There are, and sometimes just observing other people working out or developing relationships, a lot of people develop friendships in gyms. I've seen many friendships develop over the years in gyms, which is wonderful. And, you can learn from other people as well. But there's so much on the internet now that you can actually go online and Google weight training in the gym, proper techniques. And I'm sure something will come up. But you never want to discourage anyone because they can't afford a personal trainer. Ask the management if they have someone who can show them how to use the equipment.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think, that just so, getting started is half the battle. So, if somebody's doing body weight exercise at home, that's perfectly fine. Christine, I really appreciate your time today, and hope to see you next week. I think I'm trying to have a little more fun with next week's episode, but we'll tackle that in the coming week. So thanks for joining again.
Thank you so much, Chris. Pleasure to be here, and let's go work out.
I think it's important to emphasize, as Christine did in our conversation, that strength training does not require fancy equipment or a gym membership. There are plenty of ways to train that only require your own body weight as resistance. My next guest is Linda Magid. Linda, among other things, is a Pilates instructor, and we dove into the positive impact that strength training has on balance and stability, which is crucial in avoiding falls and other injuries as we age. Take a listen to our conversation. I'm pleased to welcome back Linda Magid, a Pilates instructor. And last week we talked a lot about the origins of Pilates. And I'm happy to say that we didn't scare her away. So welcome back, Linda.
Thanks so much.
Today's episode has been primarily focused on strength. But I wanted to, talk to you a little bit about the stability side of the equation. What are some of the things that you use to help promote balance and stability with your clients and class participants?
It's such a good question. And balance is one of those things that we don't notice it until it starts to decline. And I am a group fitness instructor as well as a Pilates instructor. So I teach all different kinds of classes. And balance is one of those things that you can access in many classes. You don't have to do specifically a balance class. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what balance is. It's actually a very complicated process in our body to maintain balance, but it's something that thankfully we don't have to think about. It happens naturally. The parts of balance I want to talk about, because they relate to our age and being 50 and over, are the visual, the vestibular, and the proprioceptive areas. So visual, obviously, how we see, and the information that we gather through our eyesight helps us with our balance. However, after age 50, our vision begins to deteriorate. So we lose edge sensitivity. Basically, what we see on the edge of our vision. That would include things like steps and curbs and cracks, because we're looking forward and we don't necessarily see those. So as that diminishes, more likely to trip over those things. We also start to experience an impaired...
Plus, you'll break your mother's back.
That's right. Do not. We do not want to break our mother's back. So the other thing is that we also have impaired depth perception. And that is one of the strongest risk factors for multiple falls for people in assisted living. So I know that we are not in assisted living, but as that depth perception changes, we lose, again, another level of information that our eyes are taking in to tell our brain and the rest of our body how to move. Okay. The next thing is the vestibular function, which is essentially your inner ear. It's inside your inner ear, and it works with your eyesight to keep your head stable. And as your trunk moves, as your extremities move, it keeps your head from wobbling all around. And we know that our hearing, and so things inside our ears, start to decline. And lastly is the proprioception. Proprioception is basically having an understanding of where your body is in space. So when you walk by your coffee table, you are with your good proprioception, you're not going to walk into that coffee table, because you know where, without looking down, you know where your leg is in relation to that coffee table. Okay. But as our proprioception declines, you're more likely to hit it. And so practicing balance helps you practice those three things to help you then go out into the world and be able to have good balance. Also, because you're talking about strength in this episode, muscle strength is also a part of the balance control system. And our muscle strength, we typically maintain through our 50s and 60s, but then we can lose as much as 50% of our lean body mass by 80. And so keeping our muscles strong, our lean body mass, keeping a high percentage of that is going to help us also with our balance, because that's how we stay upright. And that's how we control our limbs and our trunk. Now that we understand at least parts of balance, it's not the whole kit and caboodle for balance, but that's kind of helps us understand, okay, well, why is it so hard? Why is it that as we age, we lose this thing that we barely even understand? It's because we're aging. And when you go to a class, if you're doing any kind of a lunge where the foot is behind and the heel is up and the front foot is flat on the floor, that is a balance move. So if you're doing a regular lunge, if you're doing a side lunge, if you're doing a curtsy lunge, anything where you have most of your weight or all of your weight on one foot. So a deadlift with your leg lifting up back behind you, a plank where you're at 3 points or even 2 points, that's a balance move. So you can integrate balance into your regular exercise program without having to think, oh, I better work on my balance.
So what would you start with? I mean, first of all, that was a fantastic explanation of balance, but would you start somebody on strength? I feel like it's a big catch-22, or it's a more of a cycle, right? Somebody's like losing their balance or their ability to function. And it's kind of like they're labeled as I'm losing my balance and, I'm losing my function. Meanwhile, like it's correctable I mean, most of the time, right? If they're otherwise healthy, they can exercise, they can practice, as you said. So where do you start with strength and move to stability? Is strength prerequisite to stability? How does that all work?
I would say that strength is imperative for people. I mean, I wouldn't leave that out because it will feed everything that you need to stay healthy. Okay. Um, if someone came to me and they said, my balance is bad, I would probably do a regular workout and then add some balance exercises toward the end. I have taught classes where it's just all balance. It's 45 minutes of balance exercise, but that was at a senior residence where people lived independently, but they knew that they needed that exercise. And I really watched people develop balance after 3 or 4 weeks, just improve because they're practicing, because it's basically a lot of muscle memory and waking up the proprioceptors in your brain. I would say that if you want to know how good your balance is, how we would test people is how long can you stand on one foot and time them. Depending on the age and kind of how I saw them walk into the meeting, I might put a chair next to them to make sure that they were safe. You don't have to have your foot super high off the floor. You can have it just a little bit off the floor. But the moment you touch the floor with that foot that was high, timer goes off. The recommended amount to be standing on one foot is 1 minute. Studies have shown that people in their 50s, they're about 45 seconds, like on average. So that is something that we want to improve. And then, of course, as you get up in age, the amount of time you can stand on one foot decreases. But standing on one foot is a great way to know how is your balance.
And when you say standing on one foot, are you talking about like, are they standing without moving, or are they standing
Yes.
like wiggling all around?
Oh, you can wiggle as much as you want. As long as your that other foot doesn't touch the floor, then you are still balancing. I mean, the thing about the wiggling is I always tell people when I'm working with them on their balance, that if you're kind of, moving side to side, that's okay because that's your brain working. It's working to communicate what you need to do. You have not fallen over. If you fall over, that is really bad. But if you're just kind of, if you're shaky on that one leg, that's okay as long as you're still upright.
And do you think people who perhaps aren't as physically active, when they come to you in the beginning and they say my balance is terrible, um, do they have reservations doing balance exercises, and will they stick with it? I feel like motivation is probably a little difficult when somebody's progressed to that point. So how do you deal with that?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that's so personal to the person. Most people, when they'll say, "Oh, I have really bad balance," they're usually a little embarrassed as though it's personal. It is not personal. There's nothing there will be a day where I will not have good balance and I have excellent balance. It's just part of aging. I just hope that it's good enough to keep up with all the activities that I want to do. Um, but people feel a little embarrassed. And I just reassure them, if you keep practicing, if you keep coming to this class, if you keep working with me, you will improve your balance. It happens. I mean, sure, it's anecdotal, but I'm not working with people who are, you might say, infirm, right? I'm working with people who have the ability to walk from their apartment into the building or walk from their car into the gym. So they've gotten that far. Now let's get them to a place where they feel comfortable. One of the things that I always tell them when they're practicing balance is to look up. This seems like a silly thing, but if you start to lose your vision and now suddenly you're worried about the cracks and the curves, where are you looking? You're looking down. Now your head is down, your shoulders start to slump, and you're not looking up, which is a lot more information than what's on the ground. And so when I'm working with people, we're in a completely flat space. It's very safe. And I just encourage them to look forward as a practice to try to get them to remember to look up and then, look down when you need to, but don't look down the entire time because then that's what your brain gets used to. And now you're really more accommodating the decline instead of fighting it.
I think that point about sticking with it is important because it's not the whole point of fitness exercise, improving your strength, improving your cardio, improving your stability and balance, is for a lot of people, yeah, it's not necessarily going to come naturally. So it takes practice, and you have to do it consistently. I cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, I do, to your point earlier, deadlifts on one leg. I do those. Yeah, I lose my balance from time to time. Like I'm a human being, when you have, a couple of heavy weights and you're going down on one foot and then bringing that weight back up. It's not easy to do, right out of the gate. Like I think the expectation part of it is also key. Um, well, Linda, I really appreciate your time tonight, and look forward to hopefully seeing you next week. And perhaps um, you know, you'd be open to sharing your news that you told me earlier. But maybe we'll save that for next week.
Let's save it for next week because I haven't even told my whole Facebook community. I just kind of put it out there with some little hints. But it's just, let's just say it's me plus Taylor Swift plus Time Magazine plus exercise.
Well, congratulations and thank you again for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
I just love being on here. Thanks so much, Chris.
My final guest this week is Rebecca Dickinson. Rebecca is a registered nurse and a holistic health coach, and we discuss post-workout nutrition, her disdain for sports drinks, and why good old H2O is best for hydration before, during, and after your workout. Hi, I'd like to welcome back Rebecca Dickinson. Rebecca is a registered nurse and a holistic health coach. She's joined us for a couple of segments in the past on the best ways to stock your pantry, as well as balanced gut or gut health. So welcome back, Rebecca.
Hi, well, I'm glad you're having me back. Nice to see you.
So today we're discussing strength training. And so one of the first question I actually have for you is, I wanted to get your take on sports drinks and, whether you think they're necessary or maybe just share your opinions on sports drinks.
Sure. Okay, so sports drinks, we're talking Gatorade, Powerade, all those different electric colored drinks that you find on the store shelves. And I don't think there's any need for those at all. They are filled with artificial colors. They have sugar in them. Yes, do they replenish electrolytes? Sure. But does the average person expending enough in a gym, in a workout that is requiring electrolyte replacement? In my opinion, the answer is no. Water is your best bet. Obviously, we've got, kids who are playing competitive sports, who are, running on the field, playing soccer. They may need or require some type of replenishment. My go-to in that instance would be coconut water. Coconut water is very readily available. It is an excellent choice for electrolyte replacement, and it doesn't come with a side of I'm imagining that orange or red or blue Gatorade that I feel is probably staining your insides because it is so electric in color. I think that's all you need, honestly. And if, you want to just replenish with water after your gym workout, I think that's totally fine.
I'd say I tend to agree because I think, one of the things that people don't get enough of is hydration, and they don't get enough hydration by drinking water. They just don't drink enough water. I do my best every day. I have my water bottle here. It's always filled up. It empties every, so often. But I feel like I'm never getting enough hydration.
Yeah.
And that, there's no sports drink. I don't know, maybe Pedialyte. I mean, is that any different, do you think?
Pedialyte, it's got, stuff in it that's taking it and giving it a flavor, giving it a color. It's still not as close to a natural source of, electrolyte replacement as, say, a coconut water would be. There's that liquid IV, I think it's a newer thing on the market. It's like a powder that you can add into your water that's supposed to be great for rehydration purposes. I haven't honestly looked at the ingredients too closely on that one yet. I think it's, been around for maybe a year or two. I know when I was packing up my daughter for college and I was on a lot of different websites that were, giving you things to remember to pack, and a first aid kit was one of them. And in that first aid kit, the recommendation was to put that liquid IV powdered replacement in there so that if they got the stomach bug or something like that while they were in college and living in the dorm, it was an easy way to replenish electrolytes. So jury's still out on that one for me, but I do think getting your water in on a, day-to-day basis is super duper important. And you can certainly drink your water, but you can also, fruits and vegetables have a lot of water content in them and can provide a lot of hydration. I mean, just look at a watermelon. There's tons of hydration in a watermelon, and you're also getting a lot of nutrients when you eat that. Cucumber has a lot of water in it. So you can think about getting it from food sources as well. Chicken broth is a great way to provide nutrients and hydration to your body.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I probably know the answer to this question, but in terms of, last week we talked a bit about the kinds of things that you have in your pantry. What
Yeah,
about for post-workout? I mean,
yeah,
do you
sure.
subscribe to this idea of, you need specific things post-workout, or is it okay to just, you know, eat your next meal if you're, we're talking about somebody who's exercising on a regular basis, but not, elite athletes.
Yeah. Okay. So, if you're talking about someone who's hitting up the gym and doing a fair bit of cardio, maybe throwing in some strength training sessions, it's not a bad idea to have a snack to kind of replenish some of those energy stores that you've used up in the gym. And I think thinking of protein, fiber, and healthy fat and making up meals based along those lines. So, for example, one of my favorite go-to snacks could be 2 hard-boiled eggs. I like to pop out the yolk and mix it with some avocado, and then pop it back in. And you've got the trifecta right there. You've got your protein, you've got your fiber, and you've got your healthy fat. So I think that's an excellent, easy thing to do. Hummus with cut up vegetables is another great option. You've got your protein, you've got your fiber, you've got your healthy fat, and who doesn't love hummus with some nice cut up vegetables? That's such an easy one. I love to make, like, when my daughter was a competitive swimmer, and she'd come home from her swim practices and she'd be pretty darn hungry. So I used to make energy balls, and they were essentially it was a recipe you can find. I mean, there's multiple ways to make them, but it's peanut butter mixed with oatmeal, mixed with flaxseed, mixed with whatever other types of mix-ins you like. I did put in a small amount of maple syrup just to give it a little bit of sweetness. And then it's kind of sky's the limit with what else you want to put in there. You could add in some dried coconut. You could add in, if you like raisins, you could throw raisins in there. You could throw in, I mean, even just a couple tablespoons of mini chocolate chips isn't a horrible thing. And then mix them up in these little teeny tiny balls, and they're filled with everything that you would want in a healthy snack. And she'd come home from swim and she'd pop like 3 or 4, in her mouth. And it was like suddenly, she felt satiated, and it was easy grab and go. She'd even pack those and take with her to her swim meets, because she'd be sitting there for hours.
I think two things. I just visited my cousin in Boston because Jack and I were visiting colleges, and he's an excellent cook. And one of the things he said he does is he makes homemade hummus.
Oh, yeah.
Which he said, oh, it's chickpeas and this paste, and that's pretty much it.
Oh my
Sounded
gosh.
great.
It is so easy to make homemade hummus, and I will challenge you to find a store-bought hummus that tastes as good as homemade hummus.
Yeah, well, that's definitely something I'm going to do. And then these energy balls, I think people are going to be clamoring for the recipes. But Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and all your wisdom and tips and tricks are very helpful. So thanks for that.
Thanks for having me again, Chris. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Take care. The bottom line this week is incorporating strength training into your regular exercise routine just 2 to 3 times per week can have a huge impact on our healthfulness as we age. In other words, use it or lose it. With that, another episode of the HIIT'N 50 podcast has come to a close. Look for new episodes on Mondays. Until then, stay healthy, everyone.